Welcome back, everybody, to this week's episode of Leadership Ready Room Chats. I'm Brandon Jenkins here with Tom, brother Murray, and this week we're going to get right into it. It's something that came up for both of us, of course, during our connection call yesterday. It's something that came up for me personally during a coffee meetup with an old colleague of mine on Monday morning. And it's something I believe that every leader, especially a leader who is shifting into a new arena, making some kind of transition, whether that be from a small team to a large team, individual contributor to leading a team, heck, military to civilian. Anytime you are shifting arenas and you're starting something new, right? You're operating in a new environment, a new context. And it's the idea of imposter syndrome. The idea. Let me just kick it off with an example. I no formal offer or anything, but somebody reached out to me and presented me with an opportunity last week. And that opportunity that was presented to me was honestly perfectly aligned, I believe, to my purpose, my skill set, my blueprint, like really aligned. And at the same time was applying all of that, applying myself in a little bit of a new context. And so two things happened for me at the very same time or close to it. Okay. Maybe not simultaneously, but on the one hand, I thought, oh man, that seems like an amazing opportunity. And I think that it is perfectly aligned with me. I've actually trained to do it. I've done it in different contexts before. And I just thought, wow, what a cool opportunity. And then almost at the same time, in the back of my mind, it was like, dude, who are you to do that? You can't do that. That's completely different. You haven't actually done that before, that specific thing, or in that context, or with those other people. And I was like, man, there it is. Let me pause there, and I'll say, brother, what kind of things does this bring up for you when you hear me open up like that?
Well, yeah, as you know, my family and I are also considering some big changes, um, and very similarly, unplanned, and opportunities also kind of shown up on my doorstep, as it were, in the last couple of weeks, and I'm having pretty similar thoughts. Some sense of excitement, some sense of anxiety or fear, and you know, Uh, I'll interrupt myself for a second. I talk to my kids. My kids are 10 and 12, almost 11 and 13. And I talk to them all the time about being uncomfortable and stretching and growing. And if we failed, well, that means we've actually hit a limit and we're probably going to learn and get better as a result. But if we never touch the true limit, if we never experience failure or never stretch to try to reach failure, we're probably not growing in the manner or at the rate that we can. And so here we are, you and I as are we middle-aged? I don't know, adults or middle-aged men, I'm not sure which. We're having similar conversations. And I think it's actually harder to put into practice than I'd like to tell my kids that it is, right? So that's a little bit humbling, to acknowledge that. But those voices, I think, for me, if I really sit down and reflect on it, those voices are the ones that show up before growth occurs. And I'm not saying that growth equals success in the way that we want it. That's not at all what I'm saying. Because you could take the opportunity that has shown up on your doorstep, or I could do the same, and they might be epic failures. We may not succeed in those roles. And growth will occur. We will be better for having done it, for having stretched, for having, kind of dealt with that anxiety, that fear, and taken a leap. And so that's what I think of as you and I talk about this fear, this idea of am I right for that? Is that right for me? That anxiety, that's normal. And if we don't turn away from it, whether or not it plays out in the way that we want, if we don't turn away from it, we will be better. Growth will occur. And I think that for me, as you and I talk more and more about this, that is just so powerful. And I'm thankful that we are talking through it, that we're having similar experiences right now. Um, because you know what? There's a healthy dose of humility and growth mindset all wrapped up in one there. Why though? Why are we feeling this way? Any idea why we're feeling some anxiety? What's your take on that?
Well, yeah, man, I have some ideas on that. And something that just popped up while you were talking is the applicability here is pretty much any leader is I think, gonna deal with this at some point, unless they're literally just they're doing the same exact things and they never have any new or bigger missions or goals or visions, and everything's just status quo all the time, which I don't think is the norm, just for most leaders. I think that it's very reasonable that you're going to face this. And guess what? Your teammates are going to face this. You're leading a team. Maybe you're leading a team and you have other project managers working for you, and they have little teams that they are also responsible for, or even individual contributors on your team that you're asking to do new and bigger things, bigger, bolder things, something different, something that they're not used to doing. I think that you are going to not only deal with this yourself as a leader, you are going to have the opportunity to help your teammates through these types of uh, imposter syndrome, or what Tom and I are talking about today. Man, where does it come from? Well, dude, I mean, like, there's probably a really deep scientific answer to this. But I think it just comes from assumptions we're making and beliefs we have. And I'll tell you, I'll give you an example. Like for me, hey, the voice, hey, even though you're trained for this, you have experience, 22 decades plus of experience with this type of thing, specific training to do the specific thing that you were being presented with. And at the same time, I'm getting that voice that's saying, well, who are you to do this? You've never operated like that. Well, the deeper thing under there, as I kind of reflected on it a little bit, it's like, what am I trying to protect? What am I afraid of? Am I afraid of being a fraud, like being found out that I'm a fraud? That, hey, Jenks, maybe you're not as good at this as you really thought you were. Maybe you thought you were trained to do this, but you're not. Am I going to say something stupid? Am I going to get in this new room and with all these other high performing leaders, and am I going to choke? Am I going to look dumb? Am I going to be quote found out? Dude, those things like run through my mind, and I've 26 years in the Navy, just increasing levels of leader responsibility all throughout. Training as a coach, training in facilitating high level conversations between other leaders, all that type of stuff. And still deep down, if I reflect hard enough and I'm honest with myself, I have those kinds of beliefs and assumptions and fears. And I think there's a huge benefit to seeing that, reflecting on it, seeing those, and then being able to get it out there with folks in my circle like you, Tom, and Green Squad and my coach. And then we can actually talk through that and say, okay, yeah, valid. You see those things. You feel those things. You're protecting something there. You're afraid of something here. Okay, now, what if there's a different way to look at it? What? And then I get a different perspective, and somebody else maybe who's done it, and somebody else shows me, hey, yeah, dude, I see what you're saying, but look at all these other examples. Look at how this could go, if things don't go bad. Like, look at what happens if things go good, right? And so I think to wrap all that up, I think that fear comes from a belief you have or an assumption you're making about how you'll be perceived or what's at risk if this fails. Like those, what are you thinking about those things? What are you assuming about that?
I'll tell you, um, the like line between humility and this imposter voice is blurry at best. Um, this idea of something new showing up, something unexpected, maybe something that feels hard. I think in some cases, what we're talking about here is maybe it doesn't feel like it fits my identity. And I believe that we can change our identity. I don't believe it's set for life. I don't believe that for many, many years, my identity was a Navy helicopter pilot. I don't do that anymore. So I can either live in the past and still pretend to be a naval aviator, or I can have that be a cool chapter of my life, right? That's not my identity. I think identity goes deeper than we often give it credit for. And so in the maybe popular sense, we're changing our identity. Really, are we changing it? I don't know. We need a psychologist to probably help us work through that. But um, whether or not we're changing it, I think the way that we perceive it is probably changing as new opportunities arise, as we experience growth, moments for growth. And so I think it's important to respect the difference. I can be humble. I can say, wow, I don't feel prepared for that, but let me be curious. I can be open, willing to learn. And I think it's important to hold those things close because this idea of being an imposter, feeling like I'm an imposter, that side of my brain is probably going to ignore the evidence. It's probably going to be dismissive of experiences I've had. And it's maybe going to tell me that, oh, I don't belong there. That's for somebody else. And when we sit here at, 0 feet and 0 knots talking about this in a no pressure situation, it's very easy to say, all right, yeah, I get the difference. For me anyway. I get the difference and I'm going to be curious. I'm going to be open to learning and growth. It's harder when I'm actually making the decision, when I'm talking to a hiring manager, when I'm submitting an application, right? It's harder. And you touched on this before. I think the leadership kind of tie into all of this is kind of twofold. One, we can model this, right? If as leaders we're willing to really step into the discomfort, be humble but be curious, be open to growth, what better model could we be for the people we're leading? And then at the same time, we can better advise the people working for us. We can help normalize that anxiety, that fear, and we can help our teammates, step forward, step into growth. I'll flip it back to you. What's that bringing up for you?
I just thought about support. I just thought about the team. I just thought about one of the fears that I think a lot of leaders have when trying something new, shifting into that new arena is I got to do this alone. I got to handle everything myself. I have to know all the answers. I have to get it right. The weight of the world is on me. The weight of this new thing is on me. All the responsibility rests with me. And I think as leaders, what a gift we can give to our teammates to reassure them that, dude, you're on a team and you have support around you, including me, by the way, right? Who is your leader. You have teammates that are going to be able to help you with this. I think that's what just came up for me is, man, it can be really scary if you're trying something new like this and shifting arenas and you don't have anyone in your corner, or you feel like you don't, and you feel like you have it to do everything yourself. And I think it's the same on a huge team, all the way down to you're solopreneur and you are kind of trying to navigate and experiment with different ways to deliver your service or product or whatever it is, and you feel alone. And in that case, it's like, well, I don't have a team around me, like right here in the business with me. And that's kind of where I am, right? And for me, then it's like, okay, I have people like you, people like Green Squad, my family, I have friends, I have mentors, I have a coach. I have other people, and here's the key, other people that actually care about me, that care what I'm going through, and are willing to kind of ask me the hard questions and just kind of sit there and hold the space and let me wrestle with that kind of stuff. And then when appropriate, right? Sometimes it's appropriate to then step in and say, "Hey, maybe this would help you." Or, right, I now that I understand your context a little more, I feel like I've been through this or I know someone who has, here I can introduce you to someone, right? Like, but keeping it all in and trying to do everything on your own, or in the case where you have a large team, you're not, the environment isn't such where your teammates know that they have each other's backs, and that, you know, areas where I'm weak and you're strong, you can step in with your strength. I can step in with my strengths, and we have each other's backs there. Um, that's what came up for me when you were talking about that. And then you mentioned humility versus the imposter syndrome too. It's interesting because that coffee I was having Monday morning, my colleague brought that up too. He brought up humility and how often he's seen with some of the leaders he has developed, or helped develop, right, in his classes and everything, that the ones who seem to be most willing to learn, most willing to admit that they don't have everything figured out, they don't know everything, are also then seem to be a lot of times the ones who then they have a hard time like selling themselves. So we were specifically talking about, selling a service like coaching, for example, selling a service like coaching or financial advising or something where you're selling a service, you're trying to build trust and sell a service. And he just mentioned that, and not in a way that says you're humble. That means you're going to deal with, like, imposter syndrome is going to be a bigger problem with you, but more in a way, it's just you have one mindset where you're always open, you're willing to learn. You know you don't know everything. You're like, okay, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I could be wrong. What's another way to do this? These are indicators of a humble mindset to me. Confident, and at the same time just willing to kind of flex and learn new things. And then at the same time, and these are true at the same time. At the same time, then when it comes time to say, hey, you can really help somebody with your service. You can really like change someone's life. And it's like hard to say. It's just, it's hard to hold those two things at the same time. Um, so I think they're both there. You know what I mean? It's like there's going to be a back and forth, a tension there between those two things. I don't know, man. I could keep going on about that, but I'll pause there and kick it back to you, brother.
I mean, some of this stuff, Brandon, I wish I had been talking about as a 25 or 30-year-old. Uh, Things that I wish I'd been exposed to or thought about. And so that's what I'm thinking about while you're sharing all that is it's never too late, but man, this is good stuff. Um, I think one of the things that I'm going to try to tell myself going forward is when I think to myself, who am I to do this? That to me shouldn't be a call to shut something down, but rather a call to increase my curiosity and to maybe reframe it as this is a growth opportunity. Um, and again, I'm at a season of life where I think so much about my kids all the time. They're at these very impressionable ages, and the advice I would give them is, yeah, lean into that discomfort. That's the growth. You will be better for doing this. And I'm not talking about things that are unsafe or going to hurt them. Certainly not. Um, Man, what a cool way to build confidence, to try something that feels uncomfortable and to get better because of it, whether or not the outcome is what we want. I think, and we do need a brain doctor on here eventually to really break this down for us. Uh, I think that by the time we've convinced ourselves that we're capable of doing something, we are so far beyond capable, right? The capability shows up earlier, and it's our confidence that catches up. And right, that these all these thoughts are kind of very interrelated, interwoven. by the time that our brain, there's like a lag. By the time that our brain says, oh yeah, I'm good at that. Man, I was good at that 2 months ago, 6 months ago, right? Whatever the time is. And so I think that's important to remember. By the time I'm willing to tell you I'm good at it, I'm late to the party. I was already good. And so, um, it's not confidence that shows up first. That comes with time. Um, Man, this is likewise. I could go on and on. I think that these opportunities, whether for me and you or anybody else, whether they turn into something or not, let's be curious, because the anxiety doesn't mean we're not qualified.
Man, being curious is like one of, well, first of all, I mean, it's on my principles for 2026. Stay curious. It's number 2. I have 4 things on this. I'm looking at an index card here so everybody can see there. But stay curious is like number 2. And if there's like one thing that I could tell a new leader, it would probably be that would rank up there. Staying curious. Not assuming not immediately jumping to worst case, best case, just kind of like take it in and be curious about what's going on with your teammates, right? With what they're doing, with the mission that you've got going on, with you and yourself and how, what's your role in that. Just staying curious. And I think it applies, dude. I love it, brother. It definitely applies. And the fact that you brought it up in today's context, yeah, get curious about that. Why the heck? Chances are, if you've been offered an opportunity, there's a reason. Like somebody who's offered it to you or it popped up because you are the person that they want to do it, or you are in the right place at the right time. And there's a reason for that. Very rarely do I think it's just, you just dumb luck stumbled upon this thing this opportunity that you are not at all qualified for. And so get curious. Yeah. Why did I have, that's actually what I said, brother, to myself, was like, I got that offer and it wasn't even a formal offer yet. It was just hey, I think you'd be great at this. Like, what do you think? Like, let's talk about it. And I had that feeling that I already talked about. And I was like, why the heck? Where is that coming from? And we've talked about it during the call here, kind of some places where I think it comes from. However, if you're not curious about it, you may not go that deep. And so for me, like moving forward and being able to do these things is that you kind of feel that imposter syndrome for, it's getting curious about it in the first place. So that you recognize that uncomfortable feeling, that weird feeling you have, like I can't do this. And maybe you feel it in your body somewhere. And you recognize that and you get curious about it, you dig a little deeper and you're like, okay, yeah, maybe that thought's there, but man, I have so many other examples of why that's not the case, or that's not the case in this situation. I'm perfectly qualified for this. Dude, I'm at least going to have the conversation. I'm at least going to explore it and see what it's all about. Right. And then I'm going to be curious then and say, is this is this as perfect a thing for me as I thought it was? Or maybe there are some things about it that, okay, maybe that's not perfectly aligned. And then, well, why not? Get curious about that, right? And that you could go on and on and on. But I think that's something, man, when curious, start asking questions in a way to learn more about that, to satisfy that curiosity. And at the same time, their teammates are learning more about the situation. You're learning more about the situation. And you're figuring these things out together and you're able to adapt and keep moving forward and all that stuff. But like you said, Tom, I think we need a brain doctor on here to help us out with some of this stuff sometimes.
The last thing I'll say, Brandon, is, and you're talking about it for sure. I'm going to make it even simpler language, because what I tell myself is that the curiosity needs to explore the pros and the cons, the goods and the bads, because I think too often I'm curious and I explore the downside. Oh, what if this? What if that? What if this goes wrong? And I undervalue the potential upsides. And one of the upsides that, as we explore these things mentally, needs to be, one of the positive needs to be the growth that will occur, regardless of the outcome, regardless of like a binary, I got the job or I didn't, I passed the test or I failed the test. Regardless of that, I need to remind myself that sometimes just growing, just becoming a better version of myself, understanding more about myself, that in and of itself is enough. Man, I love this. I'll stop there. This is a good one, and I'll final thoughts to you.
I'm going to let that stand, dude. I love that final thought. The only thing I'll add is that if you are listening out there, thank you for joining us. Thanks for watching the replay. And we hope to see you next time on Leadership Ready Room Chats.